Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for coming. It's good to see you all. You all know who I am, hopefully.
Who are you?
I'm Paul Cartwright. And my research project is on direct address, the vulnerable actor and the audience they must love. And particularly a specific approach to direct address that I've been learning over the past decade or so. The whole purpose of this research project is to see if this can be taught outside the confines of where I learned it, or if it was particularly where I learned it that made it so effective. Some of the most powerful, some of the most deep and meaningful experiences I have had on stage have taken place using this method of direct address. And so I want to know if that can be transferred or taught. So let me give you a little contextual background on how this all started. So there's a little city in Illinois called Nauvoo. It's just on the northwest bend of the Mississippi, touching Iowa and Missouri. And there's just a little bend up there. And back in April 6th, 1830, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was established. And what happened was they were forced out of Palmyra, New York. They were persecuted and sent out, so they moved to Kirtland, Ohio. Well, Kirtland, Ohio, same thing happened, and they were pushed out again, and they ended up on this swampy bank of the river where they called it Nauvoo. So what happened was, this was in 1839 when they first got there, so they started to build this city to avoid the persecution and what was happening. And by 1844, there were 12,000 people living in Nauvoo. It rivaled Chicago at the time. It was the second biggest city in the state. And all of this was because the prophet Joseph Smith had them all come to this city. Well, the reason why this is relevant is because what happened in 2005 was the president or the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the time said, we need to establish some sort of, they call it a pageant, but when you think of pageant, especially Americans, the first thing that comes to your head is flashy, showy, hey, here we are, pre-recorded. But this man, Gordon Hinckley, said this needs to be a live production. We need live microphones, and these performers need to be speaking to the people who have come. So in 2005 was the first time the Nauvoo pageant was set on this outdoor stage. The stage had I think it was a 12% rake, and it was I think it was 10 to 15 meters deep, and it was a football field of about 2,500 people. So you had chairs for 2,000, you had a seating area for another 500, and then standing area behind that. And however many can fit and watch. So this was all built for this production in 2005. Including that, Our Story Goes On. We call it OSGO for short. Our Story Goes On was a production that we put together where the same convention of direct address to the audience, where a lot of people who were maybe too timid or who didn't want to come to a religious production, we would then take this production as an outreach to go out all over the Midwest. We toured all over Missouri and Iowa and Illinois, showing this to small audiences to hopefully get them encouraged to come see the Nauvoo pageant, the same direct address type that I've been speaking of. So my role for the decade that I've been doing this has predominantly been that of the narrator. My whole job is to take the audience along with me on this journey that's going on stage, and there's a particular way that I was trained to address the audience, which is why we're here. And it was all based on invitation and positive environment. There was never a negative criticism or a negative comment given in the entire process. There was never any negativity. Everything was positive, everything was supportive, everything was an invitation. It wasn't, Paul, you need to do this. It was, I would invite you to think about this, or I'd invite you to maybe try this. But nothing was ever a statement or a declaration or a commandment. It was all positive and invitation. It was also heavily religious, which is another reason why I'm interested in trying this today. We'll go over some of the challenges that we might run into, because for all I know, this could fall flat on its face. This might not work. But that's why we're here, is to figure out whether or not this will work. But like I said, some of the most powerful, incredible moments I've ever had on stage were done using this particular form of direct address. So that's what we're going to workshop today. So let's talk about just a couple of challenges about whether it can be taught before we get into this. So obviously there's no religious context here. I've asked Chris and Liz to help me today. I was going to ask Morgan, but he's performing today as well. We'll let him prepare. We'll let him enjoy himself.
But we'll mention he said no.
No, he said yes. I said I turned him down. But I actually don't know what pieces Chris and Liz have prepared. I've asked them to prepare a piece that can be done as direct address, and I'll workshop with them in the style that I was trained to see if we can get similar powerful, impactful results. You two haven't been performing in Nauvoo for a decade. You don't have that experience that I was trained in. So we'll see how that's going to affect what happens here today. The audience already has a relationship with you two. You know everyone here. You have established a relationship. When I was out there in Nauvoo, I'd walk in front of 2,500 strangers. You know, there may be a few family and friends, but I didn't know these people, and so we had to build that relationship together. You've already established a relationship. So I'm interested to see how that will affect what we do today. And then possibly the most important question, how can we define effective? How can we define how this is more powerful and impactful than any other direct address experience? And that's something that we'll discuss together. I'll be invoking your responses as well. So it's based on the definition of love. You saw in the title, the vulnerable actor in the audience they must love. So let's define love. What does that mean in what we're talking about here? Part of the Oxford English Dictionary talks about it's a mass noun that brings deep feelings or a deep caring. Fromm's book, The Art of Loving, talks about this deep and abiding feeling. So for today, our definition of love is a deep and abiding feeling for others' well-being and desire for a symbiotic relationship between actor and audience that's centered on compassion. It's not all about the actor. It's the audience as well, giving just as much back to the actor to create this symbiotic relationship. So that's why I'm interested to see, since you all know and love Chris and Liz, what's going to happen today and what we're going to find out. But I guess I've narrowed it down to the triangle, is what I call it. Communication, love, and vulnerability. In order to get all three, you have to have at least two. If you're communicating with your audience and you love your audience, you're going to be vulnerable. It's going to pull that vulnerability out of you. If you're vulnerable and you love your audience, you're going to want to communicate with them. You're going to want, so two of the three will help yield the full triangle. And I want to just mention, we saw this work very effectively yesterday for those of you who were here. There was a moment with Liz where she stood before us and she communicated with us and was totally vulnerable. And in that moment, we as an audience loved her. And as we loved her, she felt that love and returned it. You could feel that. That presence was in the room. Same thing happened with Paul Janice yesterday. He sat his wife in front of him, and he gave us as an audience an invitation to come to that dialogue. It wasn't just Paul doing a scene. He invited us. He said, I'm going to do a scene right now. Come join me. And he spoke to his wife with such love and communication that I saw a vulnerability in Paul that I've never seen in him. And we've been working with him for how long? Almost 2 years now. Now, that's not to say that Paul's not a vulnerable guy. What I'm saying is that triangle created an experience between audience and actor that was powerful and deep. And so I'm under the belief that that can be consistently recreated. That it's not just a fluke. That there is a way that actor and audience can be vulnerable enough and love enough and communicate enough that those type of experiences can happen consistently in our performing. Now, let's figure out how this is going to happen. So, we've got Chris and we have Liz. I'm going to start with Chris today. We're going to have Chris come up. And the one ground rule that I'm going to lay is, as I talked about earlier, I think in order for this to work, feedback has to be positive. And even if you have negative feedback, or I wish they'd do this differently, or da-da-da, let's for now just subdue that and just see what happens in this environment if everything's positive and see what we can yield. So Chris will come up here and he'll do his monologue. He'll just tell us what it is and he'll perform his monologue and we'll just watch it. And then we're going to have a little discussion about what we saw, what we enjoyed, what he was doing. And then I'll work with him and you for just a brief amount of time. We don't have too much time to work with both Chris and Liz, but we'll do as much as we can to hopefully get what we're looking for. And we'll discuss these things and we'll talk about it. So Chris, why don't you come on up? Okay. And you can just tell us your piece. And this is what we're going to focus on: communication, love, and vulnerability. Okay, and that's what we're going to workshop with. So we are your audience.
All right. Hello, I am Chris Lyons, and I'll be doing Edmund from King Lear. Thou nature art my goddess, to thy laws my services are bound. Wherefore shall I stand in the plague of custom Wherefore shall I stand in the plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me for some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore am I base? I apologize. Thou nature art my goddess, to thy laws my services are bound. Wherefore shall I stand in the plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, my shape as true as honest madam's issue, why brand they us with base, with baseness? Bastardy? Base? Who, in the lusty stealth of nature, go to the composition whose composition takes more than doth within the dull, stale, tired bed, go to the creating a whole tribe of fops, got tween asleep and awake. Well then, legitimate Edgar, I shall have your land. Our father's love will be to the bastard Edmund as to the legitimate. Fine word, legitimate. Well then, my legitimate, if this letter speed, and my invention thrive, Edmund the base shall top the legitimate. I grow, I prosper. Now God stand up for bastards. Thank you.
Okay. What are some thoughts? What are some things that you saw that you enjoyed about what Chris just did?
It's clear to me that you understand who this character is and what he wants and what he needs, and that you understand the text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What it means, yeah.
Yes, I agree. What else?
He was very comfortable, which made me very comfortable.
Yeah.
At no point did I feel uneasy or anxious or nervous. He was completely in control.
Lovely. Yeah, Amelia, were you going to say something?
Yeah, the change in dynamics between the beginning, which was very quick and sort of excited, and you were asking a lot of those big questions, to the sort of change into a softer tone where you become more contemplative and make a plan.
Okay.
Yeah, that journey was really nice. One of the, yeah, Aubrey.
I was to say, as far as direct address, he was inviting us all. We were base with you. We were on like team base.
Yeah. That's a great word.
As opposed to like team against team legitimate.
Yeah.
I felt that. We were.
Hey, I like that. I like
we were
it.
like your friends and your almost like your like-minded army, and people to confine it. And I felt that.
That's a great point. Yeah, you know what was interesting? One of my favorite parts was when he went up on his line.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why was because when he came back into it, we saw Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We saw him.
Yeah.
You had that moment where you said sorry and you started over, and then all of a sudden you were you. And we just saw Chris giving these lines. It was really something special. I enjoyed that. Were you going to say something, Soph? Oh, so you had your hand up. I just thought, yeah.
Yeah, that, you know.
Yeah.
And after that happened, you started to connect more with us as the audience. Before it was sort of, you were directly addressing us. You were doing it even more so with choosing one person at a time, but then also looking at all of us. It was more, you're more focused with the way that you were addressing us. And I really, really like that. I think because it was, you were more just sinking into just being you and just like, all right, well, this is giving it to us in different ways.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, okay, so let's try something then.
Okay.
So Chris, I want you to just talk to us.
All right.
Here now, everyone here, and I want you to just tell us a little bit about how you felt about your performance yesterday and some of the things you enjoyed, and just talk to us
About
as Chris
yesterday?
about yesterday. Yeah, about your.
That's normally something I do. What happened the day before? I live today. What are you talking about? Please. So for those of you, I'm pretty sure Did anyone not see my piece yesterday? Okay, yeah, so I did horror in theater, and I did my short play, which I so far have called Final Preparations. Don't know if I'll keep that. And I got on stage and I frightened people with a story of a mortician who is basically, oh, spoilers, but who is essentially preparing a little girl who is going to be, buried, but we find out that he is also going to, because she's a piano prodigy in life, going to be stealing her hands and making a new human being art piece, because he's also an artist, out of it, and that's what he's doing. And it was amazing to perform it, but also I was concerned about things like, because I had written it, and there were moments and there's like, did I say that line right? Chris, you wrote it, you can change it. So many great moments like that. And then of course, hoping that the audience didn't notice things like when the body is taken away. And when they did not notice it, because it disappears, I was like, crap, they saw it. But everyone said, that was the scariest part of it, when I saw it finally move and go somewhere. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Okay.
That was totally the point.
What are we seeing right now?
Life and animation.
What are we seeing right now?
Well, you were talking about love. I can tell how much he loves the subject
Yes.
and how interested he was in it.
It's visible,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
How much he loves this. And you hear his range. He's up and he's down and he's fast and then he's slow. I mean, you see all of this in Chris, just in what's happening right now. So here's the challenge. I want you to try this. I want you to do your monologue.
Okay.
Talk to us.
All right.
With your monologue, just like you were right there. Just talk to us your monologue.
Thou nature art my goddess. To thy laws my services are bound. Wherefore shall I stand in the plague of custom and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, my shape as true as honest madam's issue, why brand they us with base? With baseness, bastardy, base, base? Who in the lusty self of nature is has more composition than doth in a dull, stale, tired bed go to the creating a whole tribe of thoughts got tween asleep and wake?
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, thank you.
What did we see? Was it different?
Yeah.
Sophie?
I think his words were flowing more. He was 10 times more relaxed, and you could tell it by his kind of his hands and his arms and everything. His whole body was relaxed.
Did you feel relaxed that
I
time?
did, very much so.
Did you feel like you were connecting with us?
Yes.
How do you think that was different than the first time?
Well, with the first time, I was more concerned about getting the ideas, the thoughts, the character, all that stuff across. This time, it was more about, that'll happen. Just connect.
Trusting that you had done the work
Mhm.
and just trying to connect with the audience.
Yes.
Interesting. What else? Yeah.
I just understood it better the second time.
Yeah.
And maybe
So did I.
And I think it makes sense that you would, like when you kind of let go of trying to analyze it, that maybe you start to understand it yourself better.
Cool.
Thank you.
I like that. Let's try one more thing. We're so short on time, and I hate it. We could be here all day. We're gonna try one more thing with you, and then we'll bring Liz up.
Okay.
So for this time you go through it, what's gonna happen is while you're speaking, I'm just gonna clap my hands.
All right.
And when I do, you can no longer speak, but you still have to try and convey that message to us physically.
Okay.
You're still going through the lines and saying them, but nothing verbal can
All right.
come out of your mouth. Okay?
Just check.
We'll just see what this
One of
yields.
those lines. Every single time I go back to it. More constant. Fierce quality. That's the phrase.
Okay, so fire off when you're ready. When I clap my hands, you can't talk. When I clap, you can start talking again.
Okay. Thou nature art my goddess. To thy laws my services are bound. Wherefore shall I stand in the plague of custom? Why bastard? Wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact. My mind is generous. My shape is true as honest. Doth in a dull, stale, tired bed go to the crating a whole tribe of fops, got tween to sleep and wake. Well then, legitimate Edgar, I shall have your land. Our father's love is to the bastard Edmund as to the legitimate. Fine word, legitimate.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, what are we learning? What do we see from that?
It's so energized whenever he gets his words back, because he's carried the energy with him between the moments of speech.
Yeah. It's interesting how when he stops speaking, it's almost like his body goes, wait, where? Oh, that's right. Almost like there's a gap of the voice is an extension of the body. I mean, we've been training, we know this, you know?
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see that shift. Were you going to say something, Liz?
No.
And what was happening? What else were you seeing? Yeah, Mel.
I noticed that, like, in myself, when his words cut away, I suddenly became so much more invested, and I was rooting for you almost more, and I really, like, wanted to go on that journey with you, and I did. Like, I felt like we went on a journey together, and because I was investing more, I don't know, without the words, I had to invest more in myself.
Interesting. So you as an audience, when that happened, you were required to give more to him. Huh. How did you feel with that?
I enjoyed the challenge of, like, I was more aware of so much of what I was doing physically to the point where I just was trying really, I just was like, I need to get this point across to you and I can't. And it's such a true feeling. I think all of us as artists and actors know that I need to get this story to you. I don't know how, I have a limitation.
Yeah.
And losing the words was just, well, what else can I do to get this across to you? Yeah.
Simon and I have been battling back and forth on this word desperation because it can mean so many different things. That to me is a definition of desperation. The message needs to come across, but without speaking, how else are you going to get that message across? And it's soliciting the audience in that you work together in, I need you to understand, so I'm coming to you. Beautiful. Well done. Okay, so same thing with Liz. I have not heard her piece. I don't even know what it is. And that's fine, because we'll see what's happening. Now, before Liz starts, are there any thoughts or any other things that you wanted to say about what we've learned already so far, or seen already, or experienced, or anything like that? If not, that's totally fine. Okay, yeah.
Just really quickly, like how to take the voice out of the body, they just feel like such a disconnect, and we kind of take it for granted that we have a body and then we have the voice and they're two separate entities. But that was quite obvious that as soon as you took the voice away, the body almost kind of goes, I don't work independently, we work as one. So that was quite interesting to see.
Great point, agreed. Okay, Liz.
I'm doing a monologue written by Louis C.K. for his television show.
Yes!
What? Who's the father? No, there is no father. It was a donor. Donor number 647B. And Carlos and I aren't together anymore. After we lost the last one, shit got ugly and Carlos left. You know, and I looked at my life and it's like, I'm almost 40 years old, I'm fat as I don't want a man. I want a baby. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is perfect. So, what are some things you enjoyed? What are some things that stood out to you?
Well, I know Liz. I love just how you can connect, and it's probably because you have 3 beautiful children. But anything that has to deal with that and the motherhood, and you just connect to that so well, and just seeing that emotion. And with this piece, of course, it's about, you know, the ability not to have children, but I think it's because you do. So I love how you can draw on your personal life experiences, but it helps the piece. It doesn't ever take away. And that's yeah.
Now we'll get to you, Sophie. Now, why do you think that is?
Why do I think?
Why do you think she connects so well? What is it about what she did that you made it feel connected? What do you think?
I don't know. Well, I think part of it is because I know her, and I know
Okay.
that she loves her children, and I can see, and family, and sort of what that means to her, and the way that I see how she utilizes, like I said, her life experiences and pours that into her work as an artist, in the best way possible.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So,
I was actually going to say a very similar thing. I was going to say her emotional connection to the text is very impressive. Like even her entire body is like.
this is that compassion working, isn't it?
Yeah.
We feel that, and
Yeah.
we want it. We want to connect to that.
Yeah.
Good. Chekhov talked a lot about compassion. Yeah.
There's a truthfulness and a spontaneity to
Yeah.
it. Like something comes out of your mouth and then you're reacting to it as if you're hearing it for the first time. It's not just us hearing it for the first time, you're reacting to it. Like, I just said this and that's having an emotional effect on me. And so we kind of go with that. We
Yeah.
go with the emotional journey that you're going on.
So we've talked about this emotional journey with what's happening here. We're going to try something now. I want you to do this piece right now as a total comedy. Total comedy. And let's see if there's a connection. Let's see if there's any way to connect to this with her doing it as a comedic piece.
Wow. Who's the father? Who cares? No, there's no father. He was a donor, number 647B, something like that. And Carlos, we're not together anymore. After we lost the last one, got ugly. Carlos left, and I looked at my life and it was like, I am almost 40 years old, and I'm fast, and I don't want a man, I want a baby.
Okay, what was that like?
I've never done it that way. And of course, like, as a comedy, I get to see and feel and hear and feel the audience's response to me.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're receiving that, that laughter, that energy is,
Yeah, so it's like a tangible connection between what I'm saying and doing and how they're receiving it.
Would you have responded differently had no one laughed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, because, when a joke falls flat, me as an actor, I'd go, okay, I'll just try to be smaller then. Sorry about that. Sorry, I tried that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think the idea I'm getting to here is that as much as the actor wants to be as fantastic as they can be, without the audience, it doesn't work. Without the audience, there is no connection, because the audience is who's watching you. They're the ones who are giving to you. And so as a comedy, this was just some crazy exercise that we tried. But as an audience, they fed you what you needed to then return back to them. And it is, I'm under the belief it is the same way with drama. That even though you can't hear the laughter, that in your monologue, you were calling on those emotions, and we felt them, and sent that compassion to you, which in turn fed you to give us more. That symbiotic relationship between audience and actor, that connection exists. Now, we're going to try your monologue again, the first way you did it, and what we're going to do is we're going to add something. You're going to stand here. I want Paul, Morgan, Melanie, Larissa. If you could come up here. And I'll just give you some very quick instructions. And then I'll tell you what I did afterwards so you know what's happened. All right, listen. So Liz, go ahead and give us your monologue, and let's just see what happens in this scenario.
What? Who's the father? Who cares? No, there is no father. It was a donor. Number 647. And Carlos and I aren't together anymore. After we lost the last one. After we lost the last one, it got ugly and Carlos left. And I looked at my life and it was like, I'm almost 40 years old, I'm fat as f***. I don't want a man. I want a baby.
What was that like?
So helpful. I mean, I know it doesn't take much.
But
we all know. We all know.
But let's talk about this. Why was it powerful? What for you? Why was that a powerful experience?
You could see the moment when Liz started to feel the support, and then it was like, it's okay for me to say this. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I think as an audience member, we were watching the 4 people behind Liz do what we are doing just by watching it, by hearing it.
Yeah.
It was a physical, we're seeing the physical manifestation
Yeah.
of what we are feeling out here as an audience.
Yes.
And then it
Yeah.
strengthened that bond and that connection with her.
This is what I want. I wanted this to be a physical representation of what we want as a performer and as an audience. That is almost as if the audience is saying, I'm right here with you. Tell me. Because in that moment, how did you feel?
Well, there was something kind of, I don't know the word, like what you're feeling is all right to feel, and supported and calming, really calming about that.
Did you feel like you could be more vulnerable?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, because it's difficult to be up here alone and to just, yeah.
Good.
It was really interesting, the physical difference in terms of how you were telling the story. The first time through, the first time you were doing it, you started to tell the story, and then there were times when you covered your mouth, you covered your face, which is a very, I shouldn't be letting this out, but there was just no need to do that. You just were able to let it go. Because you knew it was okay.
Yeah. And at the end of the piece, even more so than before, the first time you did it, really feeling the difference between when you say, I don't want a man. I really felt the desperation of how desperately you wanted this baby now.
Yeah, so.
I feel like doing the comedy beforehand made the beginning bit a bit more lighthearted. And then as it went on and as you gained the support from the people behind you, you started to kind of realize, it was like the character was coming to the realization that it wasn't a joke anymore, but you kind of knew it wasn't a joke already. It was more lighthearted until the support came, and then that made it more emotional. Yeah.
Well, it was, that's interesting because it was like I couldn't fake it, and like something about her touching me connected me to what I was actually feeling.
Yes.
Strange way.
This idea that we can't pretend with our audiences. They're smart enough, they know it.
Yeah.
They know when we're faking. This idea that you feel open enough and vulnerable enough to come before an audience and say, I'm right here, let's do this. Let's experience this together. Regardless of whether it's funny or dramatic, it doesn't matter. You coming to that audience as an actor and being vulnerable and open, you can have that communication. Was there one other hand? Yeah.
Just Paula told us that we should move our hand on our back when we felt compassion for her.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, thank you.
And so as a person, I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, do I feel compassion? And actually, like, almost before you opened your mouth, I felt compassion for you. Probably because I wanted to, but also, like, in my heart, I'm like, oh, she's not okay. And I was like, well, let's wait just a minute. And I was like, no, I can't wait. Like, the way she's talking, there's something in me that feels like compassion for her. Maybe it's because I'm a mom, or maybe it's because I'm a woman, or because I love Liz, but I feel compassion for her. And interesting enough, if I was sitting in the audience, I think I would have felt the same way, like even if I wasn't trying to put my hand on. And so like as an actor, you don't always get to feel that physical connection, but I don't know how you can trust or just know that that's actually happening within your audience.
Yeah. And that's partly why we're here. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
So we're out of time, but in closing, what I've hoped has come across is this principle that the communication that exists between the actor and the audience is pivotal to direct address. That is established. When you're speaking to the audience, you're speaking to the audience. But with this triangle, when as an actor, when you come before an audience, already loving them before you've even met them, already having a deep desire and a passion and a deep and abiding compassion for them, if you open yourself up to a vulnerability, you will be able to communicate with them in this way that we're talking about, where they will want to put their hand on you. They will want to be up there with you. And so I was amazed to see, I sent out a poll, and this will be in my writing and as I close here, about how many actors are either scared of or don't quite understand how to approach direct address. Because it's a scary thing to look people in the eye. But I hope we've seen today the power of allowing that to happen, allowing your audience to go with you and to feel them with you, and that fuels the vulnerability and the compassion to have a truly powerful and impactful experience. So, thank you.